Good morning to everyone. Here we'll be reporting about PD 1096 and its implementing rules and regulations, also known as the National Building Code of the Philippines. My name is Jacob Higuera, and on behalf of my group mates Jason Galve, Trisha Mulabin, and Mary Zulaybar, this is our infographic report for our AR315 professional practice final submission. So, an overview of the content we will discuss today. You will tackle several rules, namely Rule 1, which are the general provisions, Rule 2, administration and enforcement, Rule 3, permits and inspection, Rule 4, types of construction, Rule 5, requirements for fire zones, and lastly, Rule 6, fire resistive requirements in construction. So for an overview of our general provisions for Rule 1, Section 101 talks about the title. So these rules shall be known and cited as the Revised Implementing Rules and Regulations of the National Building Code of the Philippines, or Presidential Decree 1096, and shall be referred to as the IRR. Section 102, Declaration of Policy, states that this will serve as a framework of minimum standards and requirements to regulate and control their location site design, quality of materials, construction, use, occupancy, and maintenance. So, in short, this will serve as a manual to those who are in this profession. Section 103 for its scope and application of this law. So, the scope of this set of rules shall cover the following disciplines: the architectural, civil or structural, electrical, mechanical, sanitary, plumbing, and electronics. So basically, everything that encompasses the entirety of the construction process is covered by these rules and regulations. So existing buildings or structures without appropriate building permits or certificates of occupancy may be legalized and issued the necessary permits and certificates, provided they are made to conform to these rules and regulations. However, they shall be subject to the imposition of penalties, surcharges, fines, and other appropriate measures. So it basically tells us that any building existing or to be built must follow these sets of rules in order for them to proceed with their construction. And the construction has to be following a legal process. In any case where the law is violated or there are standards that they fail to follow, then they will be charged with penalties and fines and appropriate measures deemed necessary by the law. And lastly, the applicable and consistent provisions of the allied professional codes and other government agency codes as approved by the DPWH Secretary shall serve as the referral codes of PD 1096 and this IRR. Next, for Section 104, General Building Requirements. So all buildings or structures as well as accessory facilities thereto shall conform in all respects to the principles of safe construction. They shall observe adequate environmental safeguards and shall be maintained in safe, sanitary, and good working condition. So, in summary, this talks about, or this tells us that this law mandates that the measures of safety construction must be strictly implemented. So, not just for the sake of its employees or the finishing of the building, but most especially for the sake of its workers and employees, because they're the ones risking their lives in order to safely and correctly implement the rules of construction in order to finish the building. So not just for the safety of those involved in construction, but also for the safety of those who are around the construction. So the surrounding environment, which may be the pedestrians or other people who are passing by. They must also be included in the safety standards that this law mandates. Let's move on to Section 202 for the technical staff of the National Building Code Development Office, or the office that is mandated to implement the rules of this law. So the MBCDO shall serve as technical staff of the Secretary and functions as assistants in code and IRR enforcement. They shall also help in reviewing of final action on problems forwarded to the OSEC and conduct seminars about the code and the IRR and the BP 344, or the disability law, and fulfill assigned tasks and duties. So they convene in specific meetings or events like this in the picture in the National Building Code Development Office discussion with the Department of Public Works and Highways or the DPWH. So Section 203, General Powers and Functions of the Secretary. So they are given the power to formulate standards and guidelines, issue and promulgate additional rules and regulations, exercise appellate jurisdiction, evaluate final actions, prescribe fees, and appoint a distinct building official for every different region. Next is Section 204 for professional and technical assistance. So the Secretary may secure professional, technical, scientific, and other services in order to carry out the code. And this is where their allied professions come in. And the next is building officials for Section 205. The building official shall carry out the code, and the BO shall not appointed by the Secretary continue to act as the BO until appointment of name one by the Secretary. Next is the duties of the building official. So the building official shall be the one to enforce the code and take action directed by the Secretary, control and supervise all works in his area of responsibility, and process all permit applications, and ensure that work does not start unless a permit is issued, and annual inspections and record statuses. So in our profession, especially for those practicing architects na, they are very familiar with how much the building official plays a role in construction. So before any kind of construction starts, there must be a secured permit from the building official where all the necessary details and information are processed and should be approved by the building official. So ang mga zoning requirements ninyo, ang inyong materials used, ang inyong type of building, ang inyong occupancy type, all of those must be detailed in order for the building official to approve your construction. Additionally, the building officials will also initiate action towards various conditions, submit a quarterly situational report, and undertake tasks from the Secretary. So a brief overview of the Office of the Building Official organization. So there is a hierarchy, and those who are working below the building official serves as staff in order to help him carry out the code. Next, for Rule 2, Administration and Enforcement, Section 208 fees. So there shall be prescribed rates of fees for this law and shall not retain more than 20% of the income or collection. And the Secretary shall keep a permanent and accurate record of all of these processes. So there are some exceptions. For example, public buildings and traditional indigenous family dwellings shall be exempt from payment of buildings permit fees constructed of native materials such as bamboo, nipa, logs, and lumber, and the total cost does not exceed 15,000 pesos. So there is a communication flow of quarterly report from the chart as we can see here in the picture. So there must be a requirement of a record being kept of all the collections and the fees that are implemented by the office. So it is mandatory. So these records will serve also as evidence in case there is foul play or in case there are misunderstandings or mistakes on the part of the office. So administrative fines. And the determination of the fines to be imposed, violation shall be classified as follows. So it is classified into 3 sections. First is the light violations, less grave violations next, and the lastly grave violations. So they are all detailed in this picture, but in a nutshell, what these violations talk about is if there is something not being followed or there is a law being broken, there are certain amount of fines that are allocated to them specifically. So in this picture, we can see the amount of fines, amount of money that are designated for your type of violation. So may it be light, less grave, or grave violations. So it is all detailed in there. There are all penalties that is given to those who break this law. Section 215, abatement of dangerous buildings. So when we say dangerous buildings, there are buildings in a state of ruinous states that are fire hazards, structural hazards, environmental hazards, and generally not safe for public use, or not safe anymore for construction or even repair. So they can become fire hazards. Like I said, unsafe electrical wiring, which can also cause fire. Mechanical installations also that can be unsafe. They are all covered under this law.
So, continuing from Rule 2, we're going to talk about the Rule 3, permits and inspection. So, no persons, firm, or corporation, including any government agency, may construct, alter, repair, move, convert, or demolish any building or structure without first obtaining a building permit from the building official in the area where the building is located or the work is to be done. So, every building requires a building permit, and they are important to start the construction. So there are two types of permits. These are supplementary permits, ancillary permits, and accessory permits. So ancillary permits is signed and sealed by the corresponding professionals, and the plans and specifications must be submitted with a notarized application for the building permit. The building permit is invalid without these ancillary permits. So ancillary permits are consist of seven permits. It's the architectural, civil, electrical, mechanical, sanitary permit, plumbing, and electronics. So accessory permits is cover special parts of a project that have specific functions or uses. This must be indicated in the plans and specifications submitted with the building permit application. So examples of such parts include bank and record vaults, swimming pools, firewalls separate from the building. So you'll just have to get a permit for accessory buildings like banks, swimming pools, firewalls, towers, silos, smokestacks, etc. that are so like. And then exemption from building permits, minor construction, and repair works. Minor construction is not exceeding 6 square meters and for private usage only. Window grills, patios exceeding the 20 square meter in the total floor area. And this is for only exclusively for private use only. And repair works. These are repair works that are doesn't involving any structural member such as replacement of deteriorated roofing sheets or tiles, gutters, downspouts, fascia ceilings, and etc. And then section 302 on rule 3, application for permits. Any person desiring to obtain a building permit in any ancillary or accessory permits along with the building permit must file applications on the prescribed forms together with the completed application forms. The following shall be submitted to the office of the building official. So all the permits are should be submitted at the building officials, and these are the five sets of survey plans, design plans, specifications, and other documents prepared, signed, and sealed to duly licensed professionals. So, geodetic documents, vicinity map, location plan, lot plan, relocation survey plan and report, and more, architectural plans or drawings, vicinity map, site development plan, perspective, floor plans, elevation, sections, reflected ceiling plan, schedule of doors and windows, schedule of finish, and other architectural elements. So, in the right of the slide, there's a this is the title block, the standard form of A0, A1, and A3 for building plans and construction drawings. And fire safety documents are needed for submissions are a layout plan of each floors indicating the fire escape route, details of windows, fire exits with grille windows and ladders, and all that is fire safety related documents. And then civil or structural documents, foundation plans, floor roof framing, details and schedule of works, structural analysis, boring and load test, seismic analysis. And then location and site plans, legend or symbols, general notes, electrical layout, schedule of loads, transformers, generating UPS units, design analysis, and one-line diagram. Canal documents, Again, location plan, general layout plan, longitudinal and transverse section, symmetric drawing, detailed drawing, plans of machinery, plan of boiler and pressure vessel, sanitary documents, location plan, site plan, detailed plan, layout, that is drawing of minimum scale 1 is to 100, design analysis and technical specification, cost estimate, and then clearance from other agencies. The application for said clearances shall be requested by the owner or applicant. Failure to receive a reply within 7 days from receipt of the application for a building permit shall not cause further delay in processing the building permit application by the building official. Clearance from the other agencies. So these are the lists that are all you need to process for clearance. These are the agencies listed: Department of Public Works and Highways, DPWH, Our Transportation, Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board, and etc. Section 303, Processing of Building Permits. So, the building official reviews the application to ensure it meets all necessary standards and regulations. The applicant must also obtain any required clearance from relevant government agencies for department. Based on this review on the clearance, the building official will approve or deny the application. And Section 304, Issuance of Building Permits. Once the building official is satisfied that the application plans and specifications meet the requirements of the building code and other regulations, they will issue the building permit within 15 days after the applicant pays the required fees. If the plans only cover part of a building, the building official can issue a permit for that part only. Once plans are approved, no changes or modifications can be made without the building official's approval, and all work must be done according to the approved plans. Section 305 or 305, Validity of Building Permit. The issuance of a building permit does not give the permittee the right to ignore or violate any provisions of the code. If the approved plans and specifications are later found to be defective, the building official can require the permittee to make necessary corrections or stop any building operations that violate the code. A building permit will expire and become void if the work does not start within 1 year or is suspended or abandoned for 120 days. Section 306, Non-Issuance, Suspension or Revocation of Building Permits. The building official can decide not to issue or to suspend or revoke building permits for several reasons: errors in the plans and specifications, incorrect or inaccurate data or information supplied, non-compliance with the code or any rule or regulation. Section 307, Appeal. If a building permit is not issued, suspended, or revoked, the applicant can appeal to the Secretary within 15 days. The Secretary will make a decision within 15 days of receiving the appeal. This decision is final and can only be reviewed by the Office of the President. Section 308, Inspection and Supervision of Work. The building owner must hire a licensed architect or civil engineer for full-time inspection supervision of the construction work. This professional may or may not be the one who designed the building. However, the designer can still inspect the work to ensure compliance with the plans. A logbook must be kept at the job site to record the progress of construction, including tests, weather conditions, and other relevant data. Section 309, Certificate of Occupancy. To use or occupy a building or change its use, you need a certificate of occupancy from the building official. So this permit is required after the building is finished, and you should be processing the certificate of occupancy from the OBO for final inspection and submission of the certificate of completion. If the building complies with the code, the certificate of occupancy will be issued within 30 days. This certificate must be prominently displayed on the premises and can only be removed by the building official. If there's an issue and the certificate is not issued, suspended, or revoked, the appeal process follows Section 306 and 307.
So, next I'm going to discuss the Rule 4 of the National Building Code of the Philippines, which focuses on types of construction. Understanding this rule is crucial for architects, engineers, and anyone involved in the construction industry. It ensures that buildings are designed and built to be safe, durable, and resistant to potential hazards such as fire. So, in Rule 4, type of construction, buildings under the code are classified into five types based on the materials used and their fire resistant capabilities. Each type dictates the structural elements and fire resistive requirements. So in type 1, wood construction, type 1 is the simplest form of construction, wood construction, while it allows structural elements to use materials permitted by the code. Its vulnerability to fire makes it less common for urban or large-scale projects. So next, type 2, wood with the fire-resistant materials. Type 2 also uses wood but adds fire-resistant materials. It provides at least 1R fire-sensitive ratings for structural elements. Some non-bearing partitions can use fire-retardant treated wood. So next, type 3, masonry and wood. It combines masonry and wood, ensuring minimum 1R fire resistance. Exterior walls are made of fire-sensitive materials to minimize fire spread. Type 4, steel, iron, concrete, or masonry. Type 4 construction exclusively uses non-compatible materials such as steel, iron, concrete, or masonry. These buildings are designed with compatible walls, ceilings, and partition, ensuring enhanced fire resistance. So, lastly, Type 5, Advanced Fire Sensitive Construction. Type 5 represents the most robust construction for our fire resistance throughout. It uses materials like steel, iron, concrete, and masonry, making it ideal for high risk or high occupancy buildings. So in section 402, changes in types, it is important to note that changing the type of construction of a building isn't allowed unless it complies with requirements for a new type. However, the building official may approve changes if they make structure less hazardous based on fire and life safety. In section 403, requirements on type of construction. First, fire sensitive requirements. Um, Exterior bearings and non-bearing walls of type 2 and type 3 construction shall have one fire resistant, while those of type 4 and 5 shall have 4R fire resistive ratings. Um, in interior bearing walls, permanent partition floors and roofs of type 2, 3, and 4 construction shall have 1R fire sensitive ratings, while those of type 5 shall have 3, 4R fire sensitive ratings for bearing walls and 1R fire sensitive ratings for vertical openings, floor, and roofs. And when it comes to structural frames of type 2 and 3, construction shall have 1R fire sensitive ratings, while those of type 4 shall have 2R fire sensitive ratings, and those two type 5 shall have 3R fire sensitive ratings. And the exterior doors and windows shall have 1R fire resistive rating for all types. In the interior, interior wall and ceiling finishes, finishes for interior walls and ceiling of any building shall be classified according to their flame spread characteristic using general accepted engineering standards. The smoke density shall not be greater than that. It's obtained from burning of untreated wood under similar condition when tested in accordance with the tunnel test. As you can see in the way the intended for the use, the product of the combustion shall be no more toxic than burning of untreated wood under similar condition. These finishes include interior wainscoting panels or other finishes applied structurally or for decoration or acoustical correction frames and trims of doors, window, and surface insulation or similar purposes. Um, in B, requirements for flame spread characteristic of finishes shall not apply to frames, rim of doors, windows, and to materials which are less than 1 millimeter in thickness, cemented to the surface or wall or ceilings. Materials required to flame spread. Proof shall be treated with a flame retardant having a flame spread of 50 or less as determined by the tunnel test. It's standard for materials used in structural frame, exterior walls, and opening floors exist. Stairs, roof shall be governed by the partition provision of the Fire Code of the Philippines.
And continuation to Rule 5 requirements for fire zones. Section 501 Fire zones defined. Fire zones are areas within which only certain types of buildings are permitted to be constructed based on their use or occupancy, type of construction, and resistance to fire. Section 502 Buildings located in more than one fire zone. If a building is located in two different fire zones, it will be classified under stricter fire zone if over one third of its total floor area falls within that zone. Section 503 Move building. Any building or structure moved within or into any fire zone shall be made to comply with all the requirements for buildings in that fire zone. Section 504 Temporary buildings. Temporary structures like reviewing stands, sheds, canopies, and fences that meet code requirements can be erected in fire zones with a special permit from the building official. These structures are for public protection during construction work and must be removed once the permit's time limit expires. Section 505 Center lines of streets. For this chapter, consider the center line of an adjoining street or alley as the adjacent property line. Measure distances at right angle to the street or alley. Section 506 Restrictions on existing buildings. Existing buildings or structures in fire zones that don't meet the requirements for new buildings can be enlarged, altered, remodeled, repaired, or moved except under certain conditions. The building is completely demolished. The building is moved to a less strictly fire zone where it meets the standards. Changes, alterations, and repairs are allowed if they do not exceed 20% of the building value within a 12-month period. Don't add combustible materials and don't increase the fire hazard as determined by the building official. Additions are allowed if they are separated by firewalls. Repairs due to damage from fire, earthquakes, typhoons, or other events can be made using the same material provided the cost does not exceed 20% of the building's replacement cost. Section 507 Designation of Fire Zones. The Secretary will set specific restrictions for each type of fire zone. Cities and municipalities will be divided into fire zones based on local physical and spatial plans submitted by city or municipal planning bodies.
Rule number 6, fire resistive requirements in construction. Section 601, fire resistive rating defined. The fire resistive rating, this means the degree to which a material can withstand fire as determined by generally recognized and accepted testing methods. So to expound, resistive rating, this refers to the ability of a material or assembly to withstand fire for a specific period of time. This rating is determined by standardized testing methods that stimulate real-world fire conditions, as seen in the example. Um, so for short, it is the duration a material can withstand fire exposure without failing. The fire code mandates specific fire resistive ratings for different elements of constructions, depending on the construction types. So on to the next slide, we have here section 602 or 602, fire resistive time period rating. So fire resistive time period rating is the length of time a material can withstand being bumped, which may be 1 hour, 2 hours, or 4 hours and more, as seen on the table. Next, section 603, fire resistive standards. All materials of construction and type of materials and assemblies or combinations thereof shall conform to the following fine resistive ratings. So this section specifies minimum thickness requirements for various construction materials and assemblies based on their intended fire resistive rating. So this ensures the use of materials that meet the required fire resistive standards for different building elements, as seen on the table. These standards ensure that the fire resistive performance of construction materials and assemblies aligns with the required fire resistive time periods, contributing to the overall safety and integrity of the building in case of fire. Next, Section 604, Fire Resistive Regulations. The Secretary of the Department or the Secretary shall prescribe standards and promulgated rules and regulations on the testing of the construction materials for flame spread characteristics, tests on fire damages, fire tests of building construction and materials, door assemblies and tin-clad fire doors, and windows assemblies, the installation of fire doors and windows and smoke and fire detectors for fire protective signaling system, application and use of controlled interior finish, fire-resistant protection for structural members, fire-resistant walls and partition for resistive floor or roof coiling, fire-resistive assemblies for protection of openings, and fire-retardant roof coverage. So, to conclude, fire-resistive requirements are crucial for ensuring the safety of occupants and property in the event of a fire. They are designed to first slow the spread of fire. So fire-resistant materials and assemblies act as barriers, limiting the spread of fire and providing valuable time for evacuation and firefighting efforts. Second, it maintains structural integrity. So fire-resistant materials can withstand the intense heat and pressures of fire, preventing the collapse of the building structure and ensuring occupant safety. Third, reduce fire damages. Fire-resistant materials can minimize the damage caused by fire, protecting valuable assets and reducing the overall financial impact of a fire event. And lastly, facilitate fire suppression. Fire system materials, it can help firefight, firefighters control the fire more effectively, allowing them to access the fire and extinguish it more efficiently. So, by adhering to this fire system standards, building owners and developers, they can significantly contribute to the safety and well-being of occupants and the community within the building or the environment. And failure to comply with fire system requirements also can lead to serious consequences, including legal penalties, insurance coverage issues, safety hazard, and loss of life. It is also crucial for all stakeholders to involve in construction projects to ensure compliance with fire system requirements to safeguard the safety of well-being of all involved. And and lastly, by implementing fire resistive design and construction practices, building owners and developers can create safe and secure environments for occupants and the community. It is essential to ensure the proper selection, installation, and maintenance of fire resistant materials and assemblies to meet the standards outlined by the Philippine Code. Thank you.